Hello and welcome back to another session of Karen's Colours. I'm Dr. Karen and these are my colour conversations. A few weeks back I talked about the history of how I got involved in colour analysis, and this week I thought we'd delve into that a little bit more deeply. This week I'd like to discuss how I created my own colour charts and other tools for doing those analysis. Here over my shoulder is little one. They're not really that size. They're only about 6 inches or maybe 15 centimetres long. I found him or her, not quite sure what it is, in a car park. No flight feathers, no tail feathers, at risk of being eaten by the nearest cat that happened to wander past. So I brought him home with me, popped him in a tree outside my back door, and every morning he regales me with his big loud squawks, wanting to be fed, because he really can't go flying to catch his own food. Other birds of his type, he's a rainbow lorikeet, come and visit. By the way, I call him he because I think he may be male eventually. But they come and visit, and they invite him to go along with them, but of course he can't fly, so therefore they leave him. And he's stuck there on his own all day. Sometimes he comes inside and follows me around. Sometimes he just simply hops off that tree onto the ground and wanders off to find another tree, in which case I have to go and find him and bring him back home again. I'm hoping that he'll eventually, with good food and nourishment, be able to grow tail feathers and flight feathers, but I'm told that if he hasn't got them by now, chances are he never will. That's the joys of wildlife. I hope he lives for quite some time. Anyway, before I really get started, I'd like to thank all of you who've been watching these videos, and a great welcome to any new people that have come on for this particular one. I'd also like to thank those of you who've subscribed. It's really great to see some people who are actually interested in the sorts of things that I'm presenting here. You never know, it might come in handy for you someday. So let's get started. When I first became involved in this whole esoteric thing of looking at not just colours but also things that have to do with spirituality, I began firstly by studying the tarot. And for quite a few years I played with the tarot, and I also did a lot of free readings for charity, raising funds for local retirement homes, schools, whatever it was that was around that needed somebody who could dress up like a gypsy and do a tarot reading. And then one day I was invited to attend a seminar on aromatherapy. And since I didn't know very much about it, I went, only to find that it wasn't about aromatherapy at all. Yes, aromas were involved, but basically it was about colour. And that had me hooked right from the start. As I walked into the place, there was one single bottle on a table with 2 colours in it, red on top and green below. And I was absolutely fascinated. What was this about? That red on green bottle, in terms of the tarot, was the Ace of Wands. Interesting in that it actually did awaken in me an inspiration, a desire to get involved in whatever it was that represented. But that wasn't actually the combination that I chose when it came to be my turn in that seminar to have my colours read. The colours that I chose to represent me as my strengths, my past, was in fact the indigo and magenta bottle. That represents the Fool in the tarot. And I found that highly amusing, because not only is the Fool the person who is starting off trustingly into an unknown future and heading there without any forethought or any hindsight at all, it also happened to be the only card in the tarot which I had not had come out in a single reading for myself that I had been doing on a daily basis for over 2 years. I'd recorded every single reading I had done simply to see what happened. And I found many different tarot cards would come in and take prominence within my readings for a few weeks, and then they would wander off again and I wouldn't see them. But in those 2+ years, I never once had the Fool. And yet here it was, the very colour combination that I had chosen for myself as being the most important to represent me. Those colour combinations were available to us in either plastic bottles or glass bottles, and they consisted of a combination of oil and water. The oil floated on top of the water. It was a different colour to the water beneath, and imbued within them was a variety of different aromas. So that the idea was that you chose something as your treatment, you shook the two colours together, the oil and water mixing with the essence, and then you applied it to your skin and you smelt the aroma. Because I was drawn more to the glitter of the glass bottles, that's what I wanted to purchase. But then I had to make a decision. The bottles came in either 30 mils or 50 mils. Well, price was a bit of a problem here too, but they were used or designed for a single one-off analysis. That is, you saw a client, you gave them the colour analysis, and they took their treatment bottle away and they paid you for that bottle. That was the purpose behind it. I didn't actually want to do it that way. I was more interested in learning more about the colours. So that wasn't actually all that suitable for the sort of clients that I dealt with. At the time, I had also become a hypnotherapist, and I was seeing clients on a weekly basis, fortnightly basis, sometimes only monthly. But each time I did a colour analysis with these people, something had changed. So in order to give them a 30 ml bottle of something that was going to last them for 8, 10, 12 months was really false economy. So I didn't do it that way. Instead, I got hold of the essences that were put into those coloured bottles, and I kept those separate, and I gave small quantities of that to my clients in order to get the benefit of the essences, but at the same time be able to maintain my stock of coloured bottles for the analysis itself. What I did discover was that in among my clients, many of them chose treatments that weren't actually part of the initial 78 or 79 bottles in the set. So I had to ask for special bottles to be made up. That didn't actually suit the people who were supplying them, and we had a little bit of a falling out over it. Well, I've done that a few times in my life. I'm a pretty stubborn sort of a person. So it didn't surprise me that they didn't want to do it. Instead, I bought my set of glass bottles, and I also bought a set of plastic bottles. Now, the glass bottles were the ones that I was going to use as my analysis tools, and the plastic ones were going to be the ones that I originally intended to give to clients to purchase before I changed my mind about that. The glass bottles had quite a charm about them that was missing from plastic bottles, because I found over time that the plastic not only faded the colours inside, but also the bottles themselves became yellowed with age, and the aromas inside them also began to smell quite distinctly nastily, so I didn't bother with them anymore. I would then start taking those glass bottles instead to various different spiritual fairs. And there I found that even in the glass, protected as they were from any sort of chemical contamination, nevertheless, the colours tended to degrade, and particularly the colours of the water. And I was constantly having to try and revamp those colours. And really, that happened to be most unsuccessful. I also found over time, and this is many years down the track, that there were growth of some sort of inclusions that marred the beauty of the bottles. So in the end, I decided I'd had enough. I emptied them, I sterilised them, and I began all over again by refilling them. At first, I refilled them with the oils that I'd taken out, that I'd siphoned off very carefully, and used salt water instead of distilled water, because I couldn't get any at the time, to use as the water underneath. That seemed to last for quite some time, but then I discovered that there were other problems. Firstly, transportation issues. There were breakages. The weight of the displays meant that I had to be very careful how I assembled the displays. I also found that since I was starting to do classes for various different people who were interested in learning about colour, that I needed to simplify it. So not only was I expanding my colours in that I was using more colours than I had been previously, because I was using those that matched every combination within a particular sequence of colours, rather than just sticking to those that were available through the tarot reading of the person I bought them from. So instead, I simplified the number of colours that people are going to be using and stuck to the rainbow colours. Most people can pretty well identify with those rainbow colours. In order to make it more accessible to the students I was working with, I then started to work on creating hand-painted charts. Remember, these were the days before we had colour printers, even the days when computers were widely accepted as a part of your everyday. I also produced an accompanying booklet that explained each of the colour combinations and allowed the students in those classes to take their own notes, make their own observations, and encourage them to identify ideas on their own. In order to make it visible to other people as well and to attract attention at some of the fairs, I created some wall poster charts. The first one was the full chart of my expanded repertoire, but I used ink, and that was not a good choice because ink fades very quickly. It was portable, it was light, it was easy to set up, but the fading meant that it was not a long-term solution. Then we went electronic. I created a number of different colour cards. I developed a website with interactive readings. That website no longer exists, by the way, but the colours were red, blue and yellow. And the idea was that a person chose whatever they were most attracted to, read about that, then made another choice and read about that, and continued on and virtually worked their way through most, if not all, of the colour combinations. The designed set of cards was used to create something that would be able to be taken away by people. But there was a problem here, because now I had 144 cards for every single set. That's a lot of cards to work with. And I also couldn't find a printer who was prepared to put them on the sort of cardstock that needed to be used in order to be able to shuffle these cards. Not that I particularly encourage shuffling anyway, because the whole idea of a colour analysis is that you consciously choose which colours represent you. And if you're just shuffling, then you're not getting that choice. So now here I am stuck with a diminishing number of glass bottles, because there are more and more breakages and the glass bottles are no longer available. And the colour cards are too cumbersome to use as a way of showing people how to use the analysis. So I decided to do something a little bit more portable. A couple of embroidered cloths. One of them was of the chakra colours and the other one was of the basic colour terms. I did these 2 lots of embroidered cloths because by this stage I'd also started studying colour as a social phenomenon at university. And because of this, I've discovered that basic colour terms were probably more meaningful to people than the colours associated with the chakras, and also it made it more accessible to those people who didn't believe in that sort of spiritual stuff. The coloured cloths actually overcame the problems of portability. They were fade-proof, is still in use today, and they're multi-directional. The way that I designed them meant that it didn't matter where the client sat, there was always one colour that was over the top of the other one. And that made the analysis very easy. I still needed a display set, though, for a permanent display for those people who came to me for individual analyses. And for that, I started experimenting with wax gel. Now, it's excellent in terms of colour uptake, but you cannot place one colour gel on top of the other colour gel because the colours leach into one another. And I tried many different ways of separating them out and all of them failed.
An additional problem that arises when using wax gel is that if you don't pour carefully enough, it will end up with lots of bubbles inside it. And because it sets so rapidly, there's no way of getting rid of those bubbles short of reheating it. That's okay if you're not using moulds, but if the mould is susceptible to heat, such as putting it in an oven, then you're in trouble.
What's more, in hot weather, the wax gel tends to melt, so it distorts the entire appearance. Instead, I'm now working on resin as an alternative. Resin also gives excellent colour. It requires heat-resistant mould because it heats during its curing phase. And in the process of creating them, you again cannot pour one colour over the other. They have to be glued together. There are many YouTubers out there who are far more experienced at this than I am, so I'm still experimenting. But hopefully, somewhere in the next few weeks, I'll be able to show you exactly what it is that happened when I started to play with resin as an alternative to creating the colour displays. Hope you'll stick with me and find out just how I went. Okay, that's it for today. I hope that you've enjoyed this very short foray into the history of how to create a colour analysis display set, and maybe you'll join me next time. I'm hoping to be able to bring some more ideas of colour analysis of films. I still have quite a number of videos to do on introducing different personality types and how they are created. So we've got quite a lot of work still to be done before we get down to the nitty-gritty of looking at colour analysis in detail. Hope you'll stick with me then. Until then, have a great week. Bye.